never, ever going to do it. Let's bring in our feisty Sunday night panel. If only I could record what they said in the break and play it back to you. I'd have to replay it after midnight. But anyway, Prue MacSween, Liberal Senator Holly Hughes and Labor Senator Matt Thistlethwaite. Thank goodness, Matt, you've stayed out of the studio. They're bad influences.
You're a wimp, Matt.
Welcome, Matt.
Too much banter over there, Chris. You're outnumbered, mate.
You're not wrong. Happy Mother's Day to you both.
Thank you. Very spoiled. Got this beautiful...
Oh, look at that. Sparkly.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. All right.
You
Happy
did
Mother's
very
Day.
well.
Yeah, you're not wrong. All right, I
Mother's
want to
Day.
talk about
Thank you.
consent laws. A leading lawyer has attacked proposed New South Wales sexual consent laws, which make it a crime to nag or beg for sex and even tell lies about whether you're single or not. Now, Stephen Odgers, SC, is raising the alarm. This time it's not Mark Latham. He's arguing, Odgers, that sex by deception could lead to criminality. I know this is not your area, you're at the federal sphere, but I get a feeling that we should send these consent laws back to the drawing board to start again. They seem to me to go into places that they weren't intended to do.
I think telling someone you're not married when you are probably makes you not a great person. I'm sure Prue's got another word for it that I wouldn't dare use on air.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's criminal, that behaviour. And I think we need to be really careful that we don't start really trying to look at what people are thinking at the time. I mean, sex after nagging, I mean, really, who's going to make the decision on what nagging is? I mean, it just seems to me very strange and crossing the mark and going into people's bedrooms in a way that probably is going a little bit far. I think we can all agree when it comes to, you know, women who've had far too much drink, or men for that matter, or whatever it might be in those situations that are out and out, people not giving consent. But I think falling into bed with someone who you thought wasn't married but turns out they are, not great, but probably not criminal.
Yeah, the difference between morality and criminality is massive.
Exactly. Look, get out of our bedrooms. I'm sick of the government buying into our lives so much. Look, we all know that Australian men, the foreplay was, are you awake? We get that.
Come on. That was decades ago.
No, it's still
Stop.
happening. It is still happening.
It's not still happening.
Well, not in my area, I'm telling you now, darling, so you're all right. But, I mean, I'm just saying that many a time you've found yourself waking up in the morning and you want to, you know, get your arms sawn off. You think, what the hell have I done? It's under that person I'm lying next to. I can't even remember their name, and who are they? And aren't they ugly? But that was the past, and I agreed with that. But the point is, consent can be given in a number of ways. You know, it can be, I'm coming up, would you like me to come up for coffee? And we all know what that means, for God's sake, unless you're a tea drinker. You go for it, don't you? I just think, you know, we've got to have our own judgment. As parents, we need to teach our daughters not to get drunk and fall into bed with just anybody and to take control. And we need to teach our sons to have respect. And that's what I believe we need to do, and not worry about all this other baloney.
All right, this R-rated panel has got to stop right here. I'm not going to you on this, Matt, but I do want to go to you on this particular subject. And we're hearing from business and agriculture, especially during the past 5 days, they are calling for building these quarantine facilities that'll cost us billions of dollars so that they can have a resumption of skilled migration. How do we resume skilled migration, Matt Thistlethwaite? Because at the end of the day, you've got places like Queensland, the agriculture sector alone is 70,000 workers short of what they need for the next season.
Yeah, you're right, Chris. I was in rural Queensland just a week ago up in Roma, visiting the cattle sale yards, and a number of cattle producers up there are telling us that there are skill shortages, particularly in rural and regional Australia. I had a forum with some local employers last week in my area that I spoke to, and they were telling me the same thing, that they can grow their businesses, but they just can't get the skilled staff. The key to that, I think, is, of course, two things. Firstly, we've got to get the vaccination rate up. And at the moment, unfortunately, Australia is woefully behind other nations in vaccinating our population against COVID. We've got less than 10% of our population vaccinated, whereas the UK and the United States are up around.
But hang on, is that not irrelevant? Is that not irrelevant? If they're foreign workers, we've just got to trust that they've had the jab, not people here.
Yeah, but that's the key to opening up our borders, Chris, that we have to get that herd immunity rate up to around 80% of the population being vaccinated. Then we'll be able to open the borders. And the second point I'd like to make is that, look, we shouldn't really have to rely on foreign labour. Hopefully, we can have a training and education system that sees where the skill shortages are and invests in training our own kids in trades in particular. And I think that this has been a great shame of the Morrison government and the Berejiklian government, that they've absolutely smashed the TAFE system, that they've underinvested in this area. We've lost TAFE teachers. It's harder to go to TAFE now, and people aren't getting the skills. So guess what? We've got skill shortages.
OK, there's two issues there, Senator Hughes. I think a lot's been done, especially during the pandemic, to speed up the likelihood of younger people being trained.
Yep.
But don't we just need to work out and say, if you get a jab and you've got a particular visa and you've got a skill and we can send you to an area, go into self-quarantine in some of these areas and you can have the job. We need to be active here, don't we?
Yeah, so two things. From the basis of apprenticeships, the Morrison government has invested more in this pandemic, ensuring not only can businesses retain their apprentices and keep them on staff, which has occurred across the country, but also increase the level of apprentices that are being employed. So we are seeing record numbers of apprentices, and we're seeing them across the trades. So we are training our young people in the areas that they need to be in, and we are recognising those skill shortages. Only this week, Minister Hawke announced workers in hospitality and tourism that are currently here on student visas will be able to work for twice the number of hours without impacting upon their visa.
But they're here.
They're
we want
here
those
already.
who are over there.
And you're right, but this is unprecedented times, and we have to do things safely, and we have to do them in a way that ensure that we protect Australians. And what we don't know about these vaccines really that effective anywhere across the world is where we are on transmission. So the vaccine might turn COVID into something a little bit more like a cold for those that then get the virus, but it's not stopping the transmission. So if someone's had the jab, it doesn't necessarily mean they can't transfer it.
All right, so hold the fire on all of that. I found this absolutely gobsmacking
Chris, can I
today.
just respond to that?
Yeah, go on, Matt, quickly.
The point that Holly makes, I think, is it's too little too late. The government has recognised that there's a problem with skilled trades and apprenticeships, but they've been in government for 8 years, and we've got 150,000 fewer apprentices than when they took government in 2013, and they've basically ignored this issue. As you know, it takes 3 or 4 years to get a trade, so investing in it now is really too little too late, because you're not going to see the benefits of it for another 4 years, and that's why we've got skill shortages now, because they've ignored this issue for the last 8 years. OK, however, when it comes to picking bananas, there aren't too many skills that you need to be qualified for, and we're still not filling those positions.
Look, and the problem is, during the pandemic, and we've seen it before the pandemic and after, trying to get young Australians to go and take up these jobs can be very, very difficult. I have a background in the bush,
Take
and
them off JobKeeper.
you can't get them out to the bush. They want to stay on the coast.
They want to stay with their friends.
Well, don't give them the JobKeeper.
I want to raise this. Beijing's media mouthpiece to Global Times has published an opinion column arguing for China to use long-range missiles on Australia if we support the US in a war involving Taiwan. So we've gone from being chewing gum on their shoe, Prue, to being a target for their long-range missiles.
Yeah, which is pretty concerning. But, you know, one thing about China is they have to understand that, you know, they can bully their people into submission. These pronouncements, not just of this particular organisation, but all the wolf warriors, they're very unsophisticated. They try and paint themselves as this great sophisticated superpower, and in fact, they're so naive, and they believe that they can control the rest of the world as they control their people, and they've beaten them into submission. This is a worry, but I think we've got to stand our ground, and we hope that our allies, who are all now showing some muscle against China, will, you know, make sure that they support us. That's what we need. We need to go as a full force. So they're not just taking on Australia, they're taking on most of the rest of the world. OK,
this will be an ongoing issue. I won't go to you with that, Matt, but I want to go to you with this. The Australian Breastfeeding Association has come up with a transgender inclusive guide to include chest feeding in its focus, because males who identify as females, they say, can apparently induce milk feeding. Are you right, Professor Thistlethwaite? Do you know whether this is right, that if you consider yourself a female as a male, you can breastfeed a child? Or, sorry, feed a child?
Chris, I got to say, I'd never heard of this until you emailed me this article, and I must say I haven't had one email or letter or any form of correspondence from anyone in my community about this issue. I think that, you know, on issues such as this, what's paramount and important is the health and welfare of the child, and on that basis, we should be accepting the advice of medical experts. But I must say that I hadn't heard of this until you emailed it to me.
Chest feeding?
Well, it's apparently it's part of the ANU as well when they put out new gender neutral, friendly, you know, phrases that we should be using. And you know what? Today's Mother's Day. I've got 3 kids and I breastfed every single one of them. I didn't chest feed them. And I think it's actually insulting and diminishing to the experiences of women and mothers who breastfeed their children to try and somehow politically correct up the language.
You know, blokes, I'm sorry, blokes, you can't have babies.
Correct.
End of story.
Correct. I've got to run. Prue MacSween, Holly Hughes, thank you so much for your time. Matt Thistlethwaite, thank you for yours.
Thanks, Chris.
Good to have you here. All right, coming up, I'm on the couch